This is a Mike Lee News Update. Reaction from South Korea to the abrupt ending of the Tump-KIM summit. We're talking to In-bum Chung, former lieutenant general in the Korean Army, and I think it's fair to say that you remain part of the Korean political and military establishment, and I'm dying to hear your reaction to this news conference.
For the record, I just want to say that I hold no official title, so I speak not for the government or the administration. I just speak for myself.
Understood.
So, okay. So,
what I meant by that is you're plugged in.
Fair enough. Quite surprised. I think nobody was really expecting this to happen.
Can expand, please.
Yeah, I and most of my people that I associate with and Korean media was expecting some sort of a deal that would at least forward the denuclearization process. So when no deal was made, I think it came as a big surprise.
President Trump said there was progress, but it's better to walk away from an incomplete, or I suppose he meant bad deal, than to just sign for the sake of that. What's wrong with that?
The old saying, if you want it bad, you'll get it bad. And I really, I'm going to bite my tongue for saying this, but I respect Trump for walking away from a bad deal. No deal is better than a bad deal. And in this case, it seems the North Koreans don't fully understand what democracies are about. I think Kim Jong-un might not fully understand that democracies work on consensus, that Mr. Trump nor any other democratic leader cannot make an arbitrary decision or a deal that his people will not understand or accept. And I think it seems the North Koreans wanted full sanctions relief, which not even Trump could give. So the North Koreans were asking for something that Trump could not and should not give, and it broke down the agreement.
President Trump said in his news conference that he doesn't want to settle for anything less than getting rid of the nukes, but at another point in the news conference, he seemed to suggest that he didn't want to comment on the exact nature of denuclearization. And do you think he was leaving open the possibility that there would be some kind of North Korean nukes left at the end of the day, or not?
Well, I don't want to speculate and speak on his behalf, but if I were he,
what did it sound like to you?
I think we need to be realistic, even if the North Koreans sincerely want to decide to denuclearize, it's going to take 20 years or 100 years. It took them 70 years to make one, and I think it's going to take a long time for them to denuclearize. So it's just a matter of fact that they're going to have a weapons capability for a considerable duration.
Well, why would it take them that long?
When we say denuclearization, we're not just talking about the nuclear warheads and missiles. We're talking about finding new jobs for the thousands of technicians that know how to build a nuclear weapon. The North Koreans have uranium mining that goes on. What are we going to do with the mines? Are we just going to close it? No, we can't do that. We're going to have to find new uses for these nuclear uranium mines for peaceful usages. That's going to take a lot of contracts and negotiations. We're going to have to find an energy source for North Korea. So when we say denuclearization, it's not just about the weapons. And so it's going to take a long time.
What do you think is going to happen next?
Hopefully we'll have another meeting sometime sooner or later, but I don't think that North Korea is going to explode a new nuclear device or launch a new ICBM and say, look, we have this capability. Hopefully they won't. We'll try to close the gap, and step by step, hopefully that we'll continue with this denuclearization process.
Of course, we're talking,
but not at the speed that we expected this morning.
We're talking and reacting to what President Trump said. We have virtually no further information from Kim himself, who's not very talkative, even though he did apparently tell the press conference, the media going into a meeting, that he wouldn't be here if he didn't intend to denuclearize. I mean, you've made part of your career reading the tea leaves, trying to figure out what the North is doing. What did you read into what he said?
I can safely say to the listeners that KJU, Kim Jong-un, is different from his father and grandfather. He seems to want denuclearization, and at the same time wants to ensure that he can survive the world climate. It's a pretty tough job that I don't envy for him. So, we need to give him some credit on that aspect. But for this round of talks, I think he miscalculated. I think he had some bad advice or no advice, and which is a concerning aspect of what we saw this afternoon. And I hope that North Korea understands that the world that they are dealing with does not work like it does in North Korea. We're not as feeble as they think. There is a process that democracies have to go through, and if you can't go through that process, no matter what deal you have, it will not last and it will not hold. So they need to come to the level of where we are, or we can't have a deal.
You've obviously studied, to the best of your ability, the North Korean leadership. Is it your impression that Kim acts and thinks on his own, or does he have a large group of trusted advisors? President Trump obviously leans heavily upon Secretary of State Pompeo. By contrast, what do you think Kim's method is?
He is the supreme leader of North Korea. He has the power and authority, and at the same time the burden of that job. I do not envy him, just because I live so close by his kind of political system, and I have to face the consequences of his good or bad judgment. I wish him well, but he really needs to figure out the realities of the world that we live in.
But do you have reason to believe that he is thinking this through on his own, or is he part of a group of decision makers? I understand what you say about Supreme Leader. That's a given. It's a title, and it's a real job, and probably what you say is quite accurate. But at the same time, he can't be all things to all people. He can't know everything. He obviously has experts, and I suppose the question is, does he listen to them?
Mike, he is the supreme leader. He is the dictator of that state. Would you be able to advise a guy like that on your own? So we think he listens and talks pretty much openly with his wife, his sister, and his older brother. But I really doubt that any other advisor would plainly tell what he really thinks, with safety.
That sounds very dangerous.
Well, that's the reality of a dictatorship.
It sort of brings into sharper relief President Trump's insistence and apparently big effort to be friends with this guy. If it boils down, do you think it really boils down to keeping this guy psychologically on the right path, or feeling secure with the leader of the United States? Is it that personal? given what you've just said?
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. But Mr. Trump has other friends. President Moon of South Korea, Chairman Xi of China is supportive of denuclearization of North Korea. So I think they will support Mr. Trump.
And does Kim listen to the Chinese leadership, as far as you can tell?
As far as I can tell, yes.
How are the South Koreans going to react to this?
I think a large portion of the population will be disappointed. We're going to have to figure out what the next step is. We were not expecting this, so I think we'll have to regroup and strategize with our ally, the United States, about what the next steps needs to be.
General Chun, thank you very much for spending this time with us with your analysis of this important breaking event.
Hey, Mike. Thank you for the invitation.
This has been a Mike Lee News Update.